Hi, my name is Kristina Robinson, and I am a second semester senior studying microbiology at Texas Tech University. My research is under mentor Dr. Ardon-Dryer, where we analyze aerosol particles and their effects on climate and human health. Today, the project I will be presenting to you is entitled From Africa to West Texas, Measurement and Impacts of Aerosol Particles from the Sahara. As Texas Tech students living in Lubbock, Texas, we are no strangers to dust and high winds blowing particles around. But we never really stop to think how this repeated exposure to particles in the air impacts our health. However, a significant event to air quality and public health, specifically a dust storm, occurred just this past summer. The dust storm in question was nicknamed Godzilla and originated in the Sahara Desert in Africa. The dust storm event occurred towards the end of June and the beginning of July of 2020. And the dust storm had such high winds and large amounts of particulate matter, it was able to travel across the Atlantic Ocean and into the majority of areas in Texas. You can see the trajectory of the Godzilla storm in the figures below. So how does this dust storm differ from an everyday local particulate matter event? According to Yale Climate Connections, this Godzilla dust storm is one of the most widespread and intense dust storms observed in decades. So this event was a 1 in 50 years type of event. The high concentrations of particulate matter resulted in dangerous levels of air pollution and low visibility, with the daily average of aerosol optical death being much higher than in recent years, as you can see in the bottom left corner. Another source stated that the city of New Orleans warned their residents of the Godzilla storm with a public health approach, especially cautioning those with respiratory conditions such as asthma, bronchitis, emphysema, and COPD. The air quality measurements for both Louisiana and Texas during certain days of the storm can be seen in the bottom right corner. The purpose of this project is to measure aerosol matter for various areas of Texas during the period of the Godzilla storm, then determine the impacts on air quality, public health, and climate as a result. Before we jump into methodology, it's important to understand what exactly we're collecting during this data collection. One of the main sources of data for this project comes from particulate matter concentration values, specifically two categories of particulate matter. Less than 2.5 microns in size, or PM 2.5, and particulate matter less than 10 microns in size, or PM 10. For comparison of just how small these aerosol particles are, this figure shows the particles compared to a single human hair. So there's a big difference there. We collected data for particulate matter for the entirety of June and July 2020 through the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality website. The stations where data was collected can be seen in this figure. 57 units offered PM 2.5 data, while 8 offered PM 10 data. Local PM 2.5 and PM data in Lubbock was collected by an aero station at Dr. Ardon-Dryer's home, labeled with the star above on the graph. Graphs and PM concentration averages were created for stations in the 7 main regions of Texas, but I will be focusing on the Houston area specifically first. The PM 2.5 values were taken from hourly measurements of various stations that record particulate matter in the Houston area. Each station has a code and a color corresponding on the graph in the top right corner. During the afternoon of June 26, there was a consistent spike around stations in PM 2.5 value, which can be attributed to the Godzilla storm. We found similar results across most of the areas of Texas. As you can see, all of the areas had a significant increase in PM 2.5 matter around late June, which is consistent with the timing of the dust storm. El Paso was not impacted by the dust storm the way the other areas of Texas were, as the spike in PM 2.5 resulted from a local event instead. As the path of dust travels from the edges of Texas throughout, you can see the same PM 2.5 spike in different areas, just at different times. For example, Houston peaks around June 26th, with Austin and San Antonio following closely behind, peaking on June 27th, and then Dallas and West Texas closer to the 28th of June. The PM10 values yielded similar results, suggesting that the increased values could be a result of the Sahara dust. While the time period lines up with the Godzilla storm, how do we determine for sure that these increased PM values are from the Sahara dust rather than from some other source? On top of collecting PM concentrations, back trajectories were generated from the high split trajectory archives to determine if times of increased particulate matter correlated to air transmission from the Sahara. Here are two examples of the back trajectories generated for each station during the time of the dust storm. On the left shows a time period where the air around a station in Texas could be linked back to the Sahara. On the right shows a different time period where the air is tracked back to somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. So if particulate matter is increased during that time, we know that it cannot be attributed to the Godzilla storm. Comparing these back trajectories with the measurement of particulate matter is able to confirm the presence of the Godzilla dust storm. Now, if we look specifically at Lubbock PM concentration, hourly values showed that the Godzilla storm's significant impact on all particulate matter sizes. It makes sense that the larger the PM size, the more matter was collected, but even PM 2.5 values peaking around 60 shows a much higher concentration than we would normally expect. So what does all of this mean? So in terms of air quality, the PM 2.5 values ranged far above the air quality index threshold of both the World Health Organization and the Environmental Protection Agency, showing that this level of particulate matter is a concern to climate and the environment, as well as public health as an environmental health concern. The formula to determine air quality index can be seen in the bottom right corner. And then as you can see in the movie, many areas of Texas reach unhealthy levels of particulate matter throughout the Godzilla time period. With this formula, PM 2.5 values during this time were discovered to be significantly higher, about 150 to 200 compared to the thresholds of 25 and 35. These AQI values were 5 to 7 times higher than it should be, so it is no wonder that this dust storm was significant in its impact on climate and human health. So in summary, the Saharan Desert traveled from Africa to Texas, impacting the air quality across Texas as a result. High PM10 and PM 2.5 concentrations were recorded during this event, specifically around June 26th to 28th of 2020 across Texas and in almost all sites. As we mentioned earlier, El Paso was not affected during this time. It was affected by another event. Also, the daily PM 2.5 values were above the WHO and EPA threshold, which shows that it's a significant concern for both public health and the environment. And as a result, the AQI values ended up being classified as unhealthy in many locations. So not the best thing that you want to breathe in. All right, and that is my presentation. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to any feedback.